Okay, well, welcome back to, I guess this would be an episode I watched because I wanted to kind of deviate from my original kind of format for this for a couple reasons. The big one being that it was just getting to be kind of exhausting and kind of burning me out to constantly have to be watching full shows or movies in one sitting and then having to remember everything moment to moment. So for this one I want to experiment with this. And so the two major things I'm doing is I'm only reacting to this one episode at a time, and as I watch more episodes, I'll be doing more of these. The other thing is that for this episode, or for this, I decided to actually take notes. Now, I took something like 2.5 pages of notes, which I think is pretty significant for a 40-minute Netflix show episode, so we'll just get into it. I watched the first episode of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And overall, I thought it was pretty good. I kind of I'd have to see more episodes to really form a solid opinion on it. But I think for the time being, I'm going to continue the series because it hasn't really influenced me one way or another. And I want to say that up front because I'm going to make some criticisms of the show that are going to make it sound like my opinion is a lot worse than it really is. Just kind of glancing through my notes, one of the big issues that, or one of the big things that struck me immediately was our main character, Pip, is very, invasive, and I thought that was a bit strange. And just a brief aside before I really dig into that, I thought the character was meant to be, 14 or something. No, she, drives. I think I don't know how old she's supposed to be, but, I thought she was, a much, much younger character. And I think that might just be the actress they chose, looks fairly young, but I thought she was young, but no, she's at least old enough to drive. And I don't know how driving laws work in Britain, but here she'd have to be at least 16. But I digress. One thing I noticed is that Pip has this weird tendency to kind of get overly invasive. She kind of seems to view herself as this kind of detective. She has this big wall of evidence on her room, which I also thought was kind of weird. Did her parents just not take issue with her writing on the walls? I don't know. It's possible they didn't notice, but I just thought that was a strange thing. But at multiple points, throughout this one episode, she interrogates one of her friend's sister after being specifically asked not to do that, and then she does. She follows the younger brother of the primary suspect in the murder that the show is about. She follows his little brother home from the bus stop. I have no idea how she even knew what bus he was getting off at or when, but she does. She just knows that, apparently, and then follows him home with muffins, and her dog. So she apparently just did this. And again, it's not really explained how she knew where he was going to be, so she made muffins, planned to do this, and I have no idea how she got that information. There's another scene where she is catering for a wedding, and at one point just begins wandering around their house, uninvited. She also does the same thing where she decides to look around her friend's sister's room. And again, this is a recurring thing that happens, and I think that it's kind of a weird character trait to give your main character in episode 1 of a show. couple other things. At one point, she goes into the basement of the house that the wedding is being hosted at, and she finds this guy, and this guy is known to be involved. He was friends with the primary suspect, and she's like, hey, I want to ask you some questions. And he goes, okay, sure, but every time you, for each question you ask me, you have to take a shot. And I was very concerned, because he is a grown man telling a teenager to do shots in his basement. And I was like, okay, this has to be like she has to like freak out and like leave. It's like any rational person, but no, she agrees to it. I was just sitting there like, oh, okay, I guess. And over the course of the maybe like not even 5-minute scene, she does. I counted. When I was counting, I counted 4. She says 5. She does 5 shots of like hard liquor back to back in the span of 5 minutes. This girl looks like maybe 100-something pounds. I don't know how she was standing after that. Like, it was just a very strange scene to me. Not bad, but just, I was just very confused. Especially the part where she was then walking around and then, like, back to the wedding. Apparently no one noticed that this, 16 to 18-year-old girl is completely hammered, and then has a shouting match with her friend who's also there in the middle of a wedding, and no one comments on it at all, which I thought was also very strange, because like it's a very small wedding, it's not very loud. But no one comments. They have a shouting match in the middle of this wedding, and then she just goes home. And then on the way back, and the entire time this is happening, she's wearing this, like, kind of dumb-looking, like, star outfit, because it's part of the wedding theme, I guess. But, she stops at the younger brother's house after previously he told her, like, fuck off. And she's like, hey, I'm sorry, actually, and blah, blah, blah. And, again, she's, like, 5 shots deep. You're telling me she just walked that entire distance, which, like, sure, I could buy that if she's walking by this point. But, like, at the same time, it's like, she just walked all that way, and it was just completely fine. That struck me as very odd. But then, so she apologizes to him, and she says something to the effect of, like, oh, well, I mean, I'm sorry that, like, I'm bringing up all these traumatic things, but, like, I care about this. And, like, the whole reason she's solving this, like, her like, original motivation is she wants to write about it for, like, an essay she's doing, but also it's because, like, there's a flashback that implies that she feels kind of responsible for it, maybe, kind of. Or, like, she thought that, like, the guy that was accused of doing it was, like, really nice, and so she wants to prove his innocence. And this apparently sways the brother. And so he's like, here, look at this. And it's the brother's phone. And I'm not sure the exact delay between the events of the murder and the show itself. I want to say it's, like, 3 or 5 years. It's not that long, because they were... he was a high schooler, and now his friends are like early 20-somethings. But apparently, over the course of these years, his family has kept his phone, and he hands it to her, and it's at like 53 or 54%. Like, I remember it being like a weird percentage. So they kept his phone, which I can buy that. I can buy that they kept his phone. I'll allow that gets a pass. But they then kept it charged. Why? Because the brother had no intent of talking to her again. So he couldn't have... I don't think he would have plugged it in preparation for this moment, because that doesn't make sense. And that's too low of a percentage for him to have just plugged it in, or that's too high of a percentage for him to have just plugged it in But also, I don't think phones would keep a charge like that for several years unused. Like, why were they keeping his phone plugged in? And if they were, why is it at 50%? That just struck me as odd. Also, Pip is just kind of generally, like, kind of a smarmy dick sometimes. Like, it's not often, not often enough for me to, like, dislike her as a character. I just thought it was just an interesting comment about her character. There's a scene I really like very early on where it's like she just sees a creepy house and she finds like a bed with a bunch of names scrawled next to it, and so I have that in my notes as sex house. And then she sees a girl like running out the window, or she's sitting in the house, and then she sees a girl running past through the window, and it's like, oh, it looks like the girl who died, and so she chases after her. But like the way that it's shot, I just couldn't help but think like, oh, like the intended scene was just ooh cardio. But then like she just finds the girl's Instagram apparently. I don't know how. The girl never tells her name, but apparently Pip just finds her Instagram. Okay, sure. Pip is just a magic stalker, I guess. But which again is another thing in the long line of why can she do these things? But yeah, like she spends a lot of the episode just dragging up a lot of these really traumatic memories for people for ostensibly the sake of her like high school essay or something, which why that like it just comes across as unnecessarily cruel to me. And I know that like she feels that she has a connection to it, but it just makes her come across as like overly callous. Because even if she thinks that she's like, you know, helping or doing a good thing, literally everyone involved is telling her, hey, stop doing this. Stop asking people about this. Stop bringing this up. People want to like forget about it because it's a really tough time for them. And then she's just running around playing like junior detective with her little voice recorder, like taking notes of all these conversations, and all of them are like a 10-minute, like less than 10 minutes long. I feel like she could have just had a little like notepad, but no. Also, apparently her dad made Mexican food, but they're British, so I feel like that has to qualify as a hate crime. No offense to the Brits, but I don't trust you guys to do Mexican food. I don't trust most white people to do Mexican food, and you guys even less so. I do not want to see what the British think carne asada is. Like, I've seen the way that you people do crawfish. Like, beans and toast is a thing. I don't trust you guys to make Mexican food, to be completely honest with you. And I'm sure there's a good Mexican restaurant somewhere in Britain, but don't trust it. Sorry. But God, but yeah, the whole scene of adult man tells teenage girl to do shots in his basement was just a very weird standout of the episode to me. I think that is about all I have to really say about this first episode. Like I said, I intend to continue watching it. At least I'll do another video for episode 2, and so on until I until I either finish the show or I decide to drop it. And I want to experiment with this new format for the time being. That is about all I have to say. If you enjoy it, like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me I'm a dipshit for the things I've been saying. Comment good Mexican food in Britain, I guess. But that being said, I will see you next time, I guess.